Welcome everyone to this month's webinar, Simplifying Daily Living with Gizmos, Gadgets, and More. My name is Donna Greening, and I'm a Programs and Services Coordinator at Parkinson Canada. Before we begin, there are a few items to go over. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. To access closed captioning, click on the CC Live Transcript button and then click on Show Subtitle. If you'd like to submit a question for our presenters, be sure to write it in the Q&A window. The chat window is there for you to say hello and talk amongst yourselves. Before we start, we're going to share a video message from our President and CEO, Dr. Karen Lee.
Over 100,000 Canadians live with Parkinson's. We have one of the highest rates in the world. My name is Karen Lee. I'm the CEO of Parkinson Canada. My late grandfather lived with Parkinson's disease, and I know very well the importance of family and how they have to come together to support one another, but most importantly, the person living with Parkinson's. That is why I am dedicated and committed to ensuring Parkinson Canada continues to empower those living with Parkinson's. Each year, our programs and services reach over 10,000 people. We are a community. We are here not only for the person living with Parkinson's, but their family, friends, and their care network to ensure we all continue to thrive. Our advocacy efforts are focused on raising the voices of people affected by Parkinson's. Our Parkinson Advisory Council is made up of people affected by Parkinson's from across the country. They bring a diverse background and experience, but most importantly, they provide me and the organization with advice on topics that are important to them and their community. As a scientist, I know the importance of investing in bold and novel ideas that lead to breakthrough discoveries. At the same time, bringing researchers, clinicians, and people living with Parkinson's to collaborate to push the needle in our understanding of Parkinson's disease. We invest in the next generation of researchers and clinicians to ensure that we continuously understand the Parkinson's disease and also the care management of people affected by Parkinson's. When I'm in the community, I want people to know that Parkinson Canada is with them at every step of their journey with Parkinson's disease. People often ask, when is the right time to connect with Parkinson Canada? Is it when they have their first diagnosis? Is it when their symptoms get worse? Or is it when they need more information and resources? The answer is now. Researchers and clinicians are working tirelessly to find a cure. Meanwhile, every single day, 25 more Canadians are diagnosed with Parkinson's. Our goal is to empower people affected by Parkinson's to live well now.
Now let's get started. Ron Begg was born and raised in Toronto, and after graduating from University of Toronto with a Bachelor of Commerce degree, he became a brand manager for several leading consumer packaged good brands at Procter & Gamble, before a stint as sales and marketing manager at Frito-Lay Canada. He then moved on to found a startup company and invented Milkmate, and then became the founding CEO of what became Canada's second largest venture capital company at the time. Ron recently celebrated his 60th anniversary with his childhood sweetheart, Judy. Together, they have 5 children and 11 grandchildren spread around the world. Now retired from business, Ron has also retired from squash and tennis in favor of pickleball. He and Judy have replaced skiing and some 30 years of competitive sailboat racing as a team together, with more relaxing bicycling at home and abroad, and with travel visiting family in exotic locations overseas. Ron was diagnosed just over 4 years ago with what he lightly refers to as perky, refusing to honor his constant companion with the formal label of Parkinson's disease. He joins us here today to share some tools and tips that he and others in his circle of perkies have already been sharing with each other. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you very much, Donna. The first thing I'd like to make clear this afternoon is that one of my perky symptoms is slurred speech. Now, I mentioned that at the outset because I don't want anyone thinking I've been drinking this early in the afternoon, although there may be a glass of Sancerre in my future over dinner tonight. With that behind us, let's get on with it. I'm going to share with you today some of my very practical perky tips. Number one is find a way to hang out with kindred spirits. My perky pals who have Parkinson's have been a tremendous source of inspiration. And very importantly, they've given me so many tips on how to moderate our symptoms and manage.
Ron,
yes.
Sorry, you're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got it now?
Sure. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I was saying that the number one tip is to get to know other people and make friends with people that have been there and done that. And from that, I gathered tips over the years that I publish periodically. My second tip is exercise in all its forms. The doctors tell us that this is the one thing that we can do that might just slow the progression of our symptoms. And what kind of exercise is enjoyable and physically possible varies from person to person. Here's what works for me. Bicycling in its many forms. First of all, in winter, I use a stationary bike, and I find it quite lonely and boring. So I multitask to make the most of the time spent at the machine. So while I'm pedaling, I'm lifting weights, and I'm doing my speech therapy on my iPad. But of course, outdoor biking is much more fun. If you're a little nervous about biking and haven't done it for a while, like us, we haven't biked since we were teenagers. But now with Perky, I find it actually more comfortable and more stable on a bike than I am walking. And if you are interested in taking up biking, consider joining a PD riders group that exists across the country. In Toronto, we have an active group called Rigid Riders, which is a lot of fun. All of us have Perky, and it's great fun. Or consider signing up with Parkinson Canada for pedaling for Parkinson's fundraiser. Now, if you're into considering biking, consider an e-bike. I find that I can get as much or as little exercise as I want. When the hill is too steep or I'm a long way from home, I shamelessly cheat just by turning on the battery. If you're interested in getting an easy way to get started is rental. If you're in luck, if you're in Toronto or Vancouver, there's a new company called Zig that has a short-term rental program, $99 a month, or if you just want a taste of it, try it for a month for $189. Now, if you're convinced you want to do it, you find that there are a dizzying array of brands and models and features. You can spend a lot of money on them, or you can do what we've done. We first bought the traditional 28-inch wheel e-bikes, but today I wanted to especially bring your attention to a less expensive, compact, folding e-bike that we bought and quite enjoy. This is the electric brand XP. We bought the Expert 2.0 step-through model, but even better, they've come out now with the 3.0 model. It's folding, it'll fit in the back of your car. It has serious upgrades to the one we have, and it's very attractively priced at $1,000 US plus shipping, which is about a third the cost of our other bikes. Worth thinking about. Or if you need more stability, consider a trike. The same company recently released a category busting trike, very, very good features, quite powerful, quite stable, and you might want to consider that. I personally prefer the two-wheel model, but this may appeal to some. On with exercise, consider pickleball. I've loved racket sports, tennis and squash all my life. I wasn't in it for the exercise. I was in it for the humiliation of my opponents, but I'm getting payback now that I have Perky. So to deal with that, I changed the subject and have taken up pickleball. I can tell you pickleball is much more forgiving, and I find I can hold my own more or less, and it's great fun. You want to try pickleball in your area. Tip number 4, getting in and out of bed and turning over in bed can be tough for some of us with stiffness and balance problems. And I have found 4 devices that help me, and I draw them to your attention. The first one is a power bed. They come in all sizes and shapes to fit your current mattress. The most important feature is that it sits you up right, which makes it easier to get out of bed. I particularly draw your attention to the Costco brand. It's called Sleep Science. And not only is it less expensive than the big brands, but and not only do they deliver it, but they also will set it up in your home. Believe me, you do not want to set one of these up. More in dealing with moving around in bed, the bed frame, the bed rail shown here is quite helpful in giving extra leverage. The silver part at the bottom shown in the illustration fits under the mattress. Or if you need even more stability, you can get a bed rope ladder at Amazon, shown here. Another very important way to deal with bed is slippery sheets, pillowcases, and pajamas. The silk makes it surprisingly easier to manage in bed.
Traditional cotton garments and sheets stick together and make moving difficult. Comfort Linen system of garment and sheet enables freedom of movement in all directions. Turning side to side and pivot actions needed for getting in and out of bed are all equally smooth. She can get in it. Traditional cotton.
You get the idea. Tip number 5, washing or showering. Paradoxically, even though we have tremors, it's difficult to get a lather rubbing bar soap rhythmically. I get around that by using foaming soap. The Method brand works quite well. It's available in all supermarkets. But for showering, you need more lather than you can get from the little dispenser. I find just putting extra shampoo in your head, rubbing vigorously gives you ample lather. And for drying off after a shower, never mind fiddling with a towel. You wrap yourself in a full-length terracotta bathrobe. This is a very interesting one. I discovered a brand of shoes called Kizik, all makes and models and styles, men and women. They have a unique collapsible heel that makes it easy to slip on and off. A perky friend of mine uses Skechers slip-ons. I haven't tried that, but he says they're very good as well. Tip number 7, you have difficulty communicating? We have an app for that. First of all, if the tremors are making it difficult to write or type, use one of the apps available for your computer, your tablet, or your smartphone, voice to text. Just dictate and it will produce text for you, especially for longer letters and memos. I dictated much of this using the Whisper Transcribe app, which is distributed by OpenAI. That's the same company that's behind ChatGPT. Now, conversely, if your typing is okay, but your voice is weak or slurred and seriously compromised like mine, try using a text-to-voice app. To illustrate this, the next few tips are going to be delivered by an artificial voice.
Tip number 8, getting in and out of cars can be difficult. Stiffness, freezing, and bradykinesia can sometimes make this awkward. This handy car cane, available from Amazon, fits in the door and gives leverage, especially for getting out of a car. Tip number 9, weariness from walking or standing. With Perky, sometimes we just need to sit down when we are out and about. Try an English walking stick. This is a cane that folds out to form a chair at the top. Use the spike foot on soft ground or the rubber tip on a slippery surface. Tip number 10, in the kitchen. Opening jars. I hate bothering others just to open a new jam jar. I especially like the battery-operated Robo Twist model. But the mechanical ones are helpful also. Now, please pay attention because this next one is obviously important.
For us wine lovers.
Opening corked wine bottles. This can be tough to do with tremors. Solution. Obviously. Buy wine in twist cap bottles. Or, like me, buy a battery-operated corkscrew. I like my Uncle Viner brand, but lots of others are available.
You get the idea. I could have used any number of voices. I could have been a man or a woman, speak with any accent, Irish, Australian, what have you. Or I could have even made myself sound like Barack Obama. Have some fun with it. Finally, my last tip is act on tip number 1. Get in touch with a group of kindred spirits in your area and help to inspire them and be inspired and get tips personally from them because they've been there and done that. And if you're interested in getting a complete list of the tips, drop me your email address and I'll put you on the distribution list. Most importantly, please send me your best tips so that I can add them to the next edition using this same email address. Thanks for your interest. I'm sorry for the trouble at the beginning. Happy to answer any questions. Back to you, Donna.
Thank you, Ron. It's pretty amazing how much technology has changed the methods we can use to more easily communicate. I'd now like to introduce you to Valerie Metcalf. Valerie is a bilingual occupational therapist with over 25 years of experience working in rehabilitation, both in inpatient and outpatient environments. She's worked in geriatric rehabilitation, stroke rehabilitation, a community interprofessional clinic specializing in clients with neurological issues, and now runs her own private practice. She also teaches part-time at the University of Ottawa Occupational Therapy Program. Valerie's passion is working with clients with neurological issues, including Parkinson's disease, stroke, and concussion. She is certified to offer the LSVT Begg training program and has experience helping clients with fine motor issues, gross motor issues, executive function, system dysregulation, home safety, and fall risk reduction. Valerie strives to help her clients participate in their significant activities, regain daily routines and functioning through collaboration, good communication, and evidence-based interventions. Welcome, Valerie.
So hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Donna and Parkinson's Canada for having this webinar. Donna can let you know that when she first offered the invitation, I wrote back and I'm like, I can talk for hours about these different subjects. So I'm going to do my best to squish in what I can. Let me just take a second here to share my screen. There we go. So hopefully you should all be seeing my little screen now. So why gizmos and gadgets? So a lot of clients that I've worked with do have sometimes a little bit of trouble accepting using assistive devices or being open to the idea. But really these little gadgets can help, one, to save your energy. They can help you avoid frustration when you're faced with something that's getting a little bit more challenging for you. And they can also help save time. And by making it a conscious choice to choose an assistive device or a gadget, then sometimes it's less about what you can't do anymore, and it's more about the things that you are able to do and the energy that you do have to spend in other places. What I'm going to show you today is just a quick overview of a lot of different things. As Donna said, there'll be a resource sheet later with links to the different things I'm going to show you. But these are only some ideas. For everything I show you, there are different versions. And so I do encourage you to be creative and, search out the internet a little bit once you've seen some of these ideas. So I thought I'd start with dressing because that's one of the things that gets pretty much everyone. So if we think about buttons, you can button less, meaning choose clothes that don't have buttons at all, like t-shirts and sweaters, or you can choose to button less. And by that, that's a strategy that I've used with some clients where for a day when they have a shirt that does have that they want to wear a shirt that does have buttons, if they just leave the bottom 3 or 4 always closed, put it on over their heads, then they only have to go through the effort of doing the top couple. Other options for buttons are adding snaps or Velcro in place of the buttons. Now that requires a seamstress or someone else to help you out, or you can buy shirts that already have snaps. There's also the option of button hook. I don't know if you've seen this before, where you insert that little tool through the buttonhole, grab your button and pull it back through. So it avoids trying with your fingers to push through, but it does require still a little bit of dexterity on your part. So not the perfect thing for everyone. The other thing that is out and about available now are what's called magnetic buttons, which you can put on your own button shirt. So it doesn't require a tailor or a seamstress or anything else. And basically you turn your buttons into magnets by putting one part through your buttonhole and the other part over your button, and then the magnets themselves just draw together and close your shirt for those button-up shirt kind of days. Zippers tend to be another thing that are a bit of a challenge. And there are two parts that tend to be a challenge in there. The first is getting that little tongue into the latch to start it off. And there's a product out, it's sold by Under Armour, believe it or not, and it is a magnet that attaches those two bottoms. And I'm just going to change my screen share just for a second to show you this tiny little video of how it works. So you can see there, it just clips itself together and then you can start pulling it up. So you don't have to do any more of the fiddling with the middle, with getting that little tongue in. It does that for you. Now, as I said, it is Under Armour who they actually sell jackets and pull-ups and hoodies and things that have that on there. However, there is a company that sells the product, just the zippers. So if you have someone who is at all crafty, you could maybe get a zipper replaced on your favorite jacket to have that magnetic element added in. Once you've got your zipper started, the next problem sometimes is holding on to that tiny little tongue to be able to pull it up. And so an easy solution for that is to add a little ring. So you can get official store-bought ones, or you can use an old key ring. I have some clients who've just used a loop of rope or yarn just to make something a little bit bigger so they can hook it and pull it down or pull up. Sewing the bottom attachment together. This is another solution one of my clients and I came up with before I knew about the MagZip, where she literally just sewed the bottom together so the two could never attach. And she would put it on her jacket on over her head with that bottom still attached and then just have to do the pulling up part. So that might be a possibility for some people. For the ladies out there, putting on a bra can always be challenging because of getting those two parts together. And so there is a product called Bra Angel or Bra Buddy, which basically allows you to put the ends of the bra into that little piece so that you can have a little bit of control, a little bit of stability to try and close it, and then you turn it around and put your arms in. However, there's an attachment that you can get called a bra magnet, which replaces those tiny little hook and eyes with magnet. So again, kind of like the t-shirt or the shirt buttons, it just holds together on its own and you don't have to do any of that fiddling to get a hook and an eye. Okay. In terms of socks, so one of the things to think of putting on socks, I have some clients who still were trying to do it standing up. So first of all, sit and think about your positioning. So what is it that you do right now and what part are you finding difficult? Some people lean feet flat on the floor and lean down to put their socks on. So think about what are you sitting on? Is it a stable surface or not? So rather than dressing from the side of the bed, maybe sit on a chair that might be a little bit more stable, might help you with that task. Cross your foot up onto your other knee can get you to your feet a little bit easier, or using a small step stool. So one foot can be up while the other one is lower for stability, and that can help you reach your feet sometimes. We found, of course, the material makes a difference. So a looser sock is going to be easier to put on, but also a sock that has a different colored toe and heel can help with orientation of the sock and getting it not twisted, getting it put on straight for those who have difficulty with that. And of course, there's also sock aids. So for people who don't know about this little gadget, it's a wonderful little thing where you actually put the sock onto the sock aid while it's still in your lap. So easy to reach and get that sock down onto the sock aid. Then you drop the sock aid onto the floor while you hold onto the handles. You slip your toe into the sock and then use the handles to pull the sock up and around your heel. There are different models and different shapes and different textures of the sock aids. This is just one example for you to see. So that can be a great tool when those socks get hard to get on. There is even a version for pantyhose, and there are some versions for compression socks, but they are quite challenging. In terms of pants, again, sitting down, what surface are you sitting on? Do you have an armrest to give you some support? Using a dressing stick or a reacher can help if reaching down to your feet because you're feeling a little rigid or stiff in the morning, that can help. So this is what a reacher and a dressing stick look like. So in this case, the dressing stick she's using to actually put a jacket over her shoulder because she wasn't able to get it around her head. But it's basically a long stick with a hook on the end so that you can catch something low, hang your clothing on that and get it over your toe to then be able to pull up to your knee and reach with your hand like is shown in the other picture. Another option for pants are wearing a larger size pants, especially ones with zippers and buttons in the front. If you have a larger size pants that you can just with it fastened pull up over your hips, then you can use suspenders combined with that, and the suspenders will hold them up, and then you're still wearing a dress pant type of pant. Or alternatively, in that same sort of larger size waistband pant that you can just pull up, have someone add an elastic waistband at the back. Or there's a product called a belt bro that kind of works as the Velcro strap to tighten, so that again, you're not undoing the button at the front or the zipper, you're just pulling them over your hips, and then the elastic or the Velcro tightens them so they stay up. There's also out there a magnetic belt, which kind of like the other magnetic things, it just fits together so there's no little thing to fiddle with to try and get in a hole. Lastly, shoes, and this is great, Ron. I loved your talking about the Kiziks because that's actually one of the ones that I had too. So the great thing about these is that the heel at the back, it stays up after you've pushed your foot in. So slip-on shoes are a great thing to look for. What you want to make sure is that it's got a good upper on it so that it's supporting your whole foot and it's not ending just at the toe. Also, as another option for shoes that you already own would be to get elastic laces. So these ones are wide band elastic laces. They also come in different colors, in different thicknesses and different lengths, with the idea that then you're turning a regular sneaker or running shoe or even a dress shoe into a slip-on shoe. Success with those can vary depending on how tight your shoe gets and how long or how resistant the elastics are. So sometimes there is a little fiddling around with it. Another interesting idea for shoes is shoes with a zipper closure. And this one especially I wanted to show you. It's a great little shoe. It comes in shoes. This one's sort of a half boot and actually a winter boot. There's a version. And the fun about this boot is if you look at the little zipper here, it goes down the side and all the way across the front of your toe, which means that for someone who's quite rigid in their feet, who's not able to flex or extend their ankle very well, you don't have to get your foot around that corner to get it into the shoe. The whole top of the shoe opens up, you put your foot down, you close the top, and then you pull up that zipper. So that's a great option too for people who have a lot of trouble getting their foot around the corner into a shoe or boot. There's also something called a shoe button. In this case, it's on a sneaker, but I've used it with a few clients on more of a dressy shoe, so more of a formal black shoe. And it's just this tiny little black button that's sort of on the corner. So you do up your laces normal, but you put it around this button instead of through the top hole, so that when someone wants to take off or put on their shoe, all they're doing is lifting it around that button rather than having to tie the lace. And the last thing, as Ron mentioned too, is, the idea of a shoehorn. So whether it's a shoe with an elastic lace, another kind of slip-on, even a shoe button shoe, having that shoehorn to hold the back for you is a very good tip to have. Next, if we think about in the bedroom, so Ron touched on some great things. I love those sheets that he showed us. But bed rails are really an advantageous thing. I know a lot of clients that I've worked with have this fear of it looking institutional and not feeling ready for that kind of a look in their home, especially in their bed. But if you look at some of the bars, they don't look so institutional. It's got a little pocket here. You can have some Kleenex and a book in there. But it does give you that solid point of contact to be able to turn in bed, to have a solid point when you're sitting up or going from lying to sitting. So they really are a great little thing. I had one client who actually slept better once the rail was there because they were always afraid of falling out of bed because they felt that they wouldn't be able to adjust if they got too close. So it helped them to actually sleep more deeply. Another option for the same sort of transfers in and out of bed is a super pole, if you've ever seen that before. So these can go pretty much anywhere in your house. It just needs a floor and a ceiling. It doesn't bolt in, so it's not damaging. And it has this crossbar that you can turn to different angles to give you the right place that you need to be able to do your transfer. And then the last thing for getting in and out of bed I wanted to show you was what's called a leg lifter. So this handy little device, it's a strap with a rigid bottom that you loop around your foot and another loop up here for your hands. And by hooking your foot this way, you can either lean back or pull with your arms to help lift to get your legs into bed if that's something that's a little bit more difficult for you. Also in the bedroom, a few little tips. So Ron talked about the slipperiness of the covers that you're using, but also for some of my clients, I found that having only one cover rather than many is advantageous. So sometimes having a sheet and then a blanket, and then sometimes people have another blanket on top, you end up getting really caught. And in the morning, it's hard to get out of all of those pieces. So for some people, they found just having one duvet with one duvet cover, that's all they need. And then they just change the duvet cover rather than having a flat sheet that they're changing every week to launder. So that can be an option. Big uncover. So that is a few of my clients that have difficulty getting out from under the covers in the morning because of rigidity or stiffness, just because of, again, the covers being everywhere. The idea is rather than trying to just sort of get it off of you, to use amplitude and the speed that amplitude gives you to be able to do a more effective movement. So you'd reach across yourself and do one big movement to try and flip that blanket off of you. So that can be something you could try. Other things to think about in terms of the bed is your bed height when you're getting in and out. Again, is it too low so you have to work really hard to stand up, or too high so that when you're on the edge of it, you're kind of perched and at risk of slipping off, especially in the mornings when you're feeling a bit more stiff. Using gravity and momentum to help you get out of bed. So when you're going to go from lying to sitting, for example, having your legs off the end of the bed and the gravity of your legs pulling down is the same time as your upper body goes up, that's using in gravity and momentum for your benefit. So that's something you could explore and play with. Certainly different ways of getting into bed could be a thing too. So some people sit first and then sort of lie and swing their legs in. Whereas I've had a few clients who prefer to try knee first and they sort of roll onto their shoulder and roll into bed. And they find that that gets them better centered in the bed so that they have a better sleep. So again, things to try and play with. It's not the same for everyone. In terms of in the bedroom, but related to clothes storage, I've had more than one client who is so frustrated with drawers and hanging things on hangers. And so some of the options for that are bring your hanger rod lower so you're not having to reach as high or as far to be able to get those things up and down. Use hooks instead of hangers. I had one client who he just lined an entire wall with hooks, like jacket hooks, like you'd have in an entranceway. And on the weekend, this is what he did. He lay out his pants and he hooked them all up in his t-shirts for the week. And then he didn't have to go into his drawers or onto his hangers for the whole week. And then he'd launder it all and set it all up again. And so that was a system that worked for him and something to consider. The idea of low height motion sensor lights. That's basically the idea of a night light, but sometimes at night it's better to get something a little bit brighter than the little night light that can stay on in your bathroom, just to make sure at least at floor level you're seeing where you're planting your feet to help reduce falls at night. And by placing it low on the wall, as opposed to having just a motion sensor light in your room, you're not disturbing someone else, and you're also not getting that flash of brightness in your eyes, making you sort of night blind. All right, in the bathroom, let me just check, how are we doing for time? Ooh, okay. Obvious things for in the bathroom. So using an electric toothbrush and razor rather than the stick ones, just to make it a little bit easier in terms of what you're doing. There's also water picks for some people who prefer that as options for dental hygiene. You can get flip top toothpaste caps, but also you can get toothpaste dispensers. So this is an example of a manual one where you stick your toothpaste tube in there, and all you have to do, because it's sitting on the counter, you can just push down. So it's a little bit more stable than trying to hold it in your hand while squeezing. And then the toothbrush also could be just underneath it. And so while you're pushing down, both hands can be stable resting on the counter, and you can get your toothpaste aimed better on their toothbrush. The other one here on the side is actually an automatic toothpaste dispenser. So all you need to do is put your toothbrush in and it senses that it's gone in and it dispenses the toothbrush for you. The other thing to consider are in the things you're using, your brushes, toothbrushes, if you're using a manual, is the size of the grips. So sometimes just making the grip bigger can help reduce a little bit of the rigidity in the tremor, just because you're not working so hard, you're not asking so much of those muscles to hold your tool. So these are just some foam tubes that can be cut down to size. There's different diameters that might help you out with, holding on to some small tools. Let me just grab a little sip here. Also in the bathroom, a challenge for a lot of people is turning on round taps. And so lever taps are something that you can get at the hardware store to change, at least in the bathroom that you use the most, so that it's easier for you to get things on and off. Also related to the bathroom, if we think about hygiene, so washing, grab bars are pretty much, I would say, a must for everybody. Where you put them, there's different suggestions and ideas and rules about that, but certainly having grab bars in the shower, in the bathtub, are good for both, whether you're sitting or whether you're standing, to help with balance and security. I do want to give a little caution though about suction grab bars. I've had a couple of people, especially in the shower, who the grab bar has moved on them in the shower. So I highly recommend, if you're putting them in the shower, that it really be the ones that are bolted properly and mounted into studs behind your wall. So it's not mounted just to the wall surface, but actually properly installed. Also for showering, there's the idea, this is called a tub rail. So this one, rather than attached to the wall, this one hooks over the side of the tub. So it gives you something to hold on as you step over that edge of the tub. There's, of course, the idea of showers, chairs, and benches, which come in a multitude of different shapes and sizes. They have backs, they don't have backs, some have foam padding. This one over on the right here slides, so 2 feet sit outside the tub and the chair slides over and you can sit down, and then it slides into the part where the tub is. So there are lots of options for that. And then also the idea of puffs, cloth pockets, and bath mitts. And that comes a little bit back to what Ron was saying about having enough lather to get washed. So one of the advantages of something like a bath mitt is that you can keep your bar of soap inside, so you don't have to worry about holding onto it, you don't have to worry about dropping it, but just being inside with the bath mitt can help it do some of that lathering for you. For toilets, so high toilets and raised toilet seats, those are something that's pretty common that most people know about, and the raised toilet seats can come with and without armrests. But one of the things I wanted to show you, a lot of people have told me, especially when you're in a 1-bedroom apartment maybe, or a smaller house where there's just one bathroom, and they don't necessarily want that raised toilet seat sitting on the toilet when they have guests over. One option is what's called a toilevator. So that's this little piece down at the bottom. And what it does is it's almost like, sorry, I keep clicking the wrong place. It's almost like a pedestal that raises your toilet up. Now it does require a plumber to install, but for those people who aesthetics is kind of an important thing for them, that can be another option. In terms of hygiene after you've used the bathroom, so that can be a challenge both because of stiffness or lack of trunk mobility and that sort of thing. So there are assistive devices called bathroom buddies. There's a few different versions where you actually use a handle. So you'd put the toilet paper on the blue part and use the handle to be able to reach to wipe yourself. And then there's a little button on it that you push and it releases to drop the toilet paper into the toilet. So you don't have to deal with that after. So these are great for some people, not great for other people. Again, it's one of those trial and error kinds of things. And another option though is a bidet. So before, bidets came only as an entire toilet unit, but now this one, for example, is just a piece that you add under your original toilet seat. So it just fits underneath, and it just requires a few minutes to hook up to the actual water system so that you get water in it. And then there's a little control on the side to be able to control the spray of water. There are some that come with heated seats. There are some that come with air dryers, all kinds of different options. So if that is something that you're having an issue with, that an add-on bidet to your regular toilet might be a very viable option. In terms of the kitchen, so slipping and sliding of things tends to be one of those things that comes up often. This is an example of a Dyson anti-slip mat. Dyson is just a name brand, which you can get through a specialty assistive devices store, or you can go to Dollarama and get yourself some anti-slip shelf liners and it'll do the same thing, but save you a penny. Another couple of clients I've had talked about difficulties doing something like loading and unloading the dishwasher. So just a simple pair of garden gloves with that sort of rubberized grip on them gave them enough control when gripping that they weren't as likely to drop things while they're doing a task like that, or using rubber gloves when they're actually washing in the sink. This little gadget here is called a kettle tipper for that exact purpose. It's described very well. And it gives the user the ability to pour something that, one, is heavy, and two, has a hot liquid that you want to be careful with some security, because it's stabilized by supporting it on the counter. Also, in the idea of security for those who are cutting in the kitchen and worried about their fingers, there are things like this. First one is called a finger guard. So it's basically almost like putting on a ring, and it just blocks the front of your fingers. So if you're cutting, you're not at danger of taking off a little bit of skin on the front. This middle one is called an anti-cut glove. So the material is just designed so that you're not going to accidentally give yourself a little cut or scrape, or going to the step of using something like a Cuisinart chopper. So instead of cutting with a knife, you're just banging around and dicing things or cutting things down to a smaller size. Oops, there we go. Also in the kitchen, so some tips: sit to work whenever you can. It'll save you energy for later. So either by moving things to your table or by having a small stool in the kitchen so that you can just sit and perch on that. Using the sink to pour items. So the idea of this is that you would put your coffee cup, for example, into the sink. And then if you don't have the nifty kettle pourer from the other side, you could put your kettle braced on the side of the sink and then just tip, and then you're pouring down into the sink with the hot liquid. That way, if there is any tremors or if there is any problems, you're not spilling one on the counter, and you're not going to necessarily get burnt liquid on yourself, hot liquid on yourself, but also by pivoting it on the corner of the counter, you're reducing the strain on that other arm, which may in turn also help with reducing some tremor or some motor control issues there. One idea also for cutting, if you're doing some meal prep, so when you're prepping raw meat, for example, like you're making some chicken breast or something, if the meat is slightly frozen, so it's not all the way thawed, it's easier to cut. Not all the way frozen, but slightly frozen. It makes it easier to cut because it's a little bit more rigid and it stays put a little bit better. So that's something that we've used before with some of my clients. The idea to make it square. So if you're cutting something round like an onion or a cucumber, cut one side off of it and then put that flat side down. So now it's square, it's more solid, it's not going to move around on you while you're doing the rest of your cutting. And using pre-cut items saves you both time and energy. So that might be worth considering if you're in a position to do so. In terms of eating itself, so a couple things to consider are grip size and grip weight. So in this fork, you can see the built-up handle. And again, that's like what I talked about earlier. Sometimes just having a bigger grip is going to reduce some of that effort and some of that strain, which can then reduce tremor and or fatigue. So getting a bigger size of things. But also for some people, they find that with a weight, so weight inside that handle or a weight around the wrist, it actually reduces their tremor. Other people, though, it does the exact opposite and their tremor increases. So it's one of those hit and miss kind of things that you have to figure out for yourself. But those are two options for utensils that can help you out a little bit. In terms of what your the actual shape of the utensil, so having a bigger bowl to the spoon might help. So an example, for example, is this Asian soup spoon, so that you can, once you get things on there, even if you do have a bit of a tremor, the things will stay inside the bowl because of the sides of that spoon. There is also something called a swivel fork or spoon, which is good for people who are stiff, but not a lot of tremor. So if you're stiff and you're having trouble actually doing the wrist motion to be able to get that fork in the right from down to up, What this does is it keeps the fork always balanced down. So whether your hand turns or not, the food stays and the fork stays always down through gravity. If you're someone though who has a lot of tremor when you're eating, this isn't a good choice because you're going to end up with this spoon or fork just kind of swinging as you're trying to get it in your mouth, and that's not going to make life easier. You may have heard of the Google spoon, which is this one here. The idea with this Google spoon is that inside the handle are gyroscopes and sort of reverse generators so that any tremor that you might have when you're holding it, the mechanics inside counteract that same tremor so that the spoon at the end stays steady. And it's actually the same technology that they use in movie cameras. So when the cameraman is moving, but the film image stays still, that's the same sort of technology that they're using, and they've just put it down into a spoon. Fortunately, still quite expensive. If we move on, still about eating. So rocker knives are something that, again, it changes your hand position. So instead of having a hand this way that's kind of bent at the wrist, which can cause stress, it can increase rigidness, it can increase tremor. This one allows you to hold with more neutral wrist. And rather than a back and forth, you just push down. And so for some people, that's a way to be able, in this case, he's cutting fruit, but you could be cutting your pork chops at dinner with it as well. Plate guards is another little device that can be used to help people who have trouble getting stuff onto their spoon. So it's just giving you a surface to push against so that you can scoop these things onto your spoon to be able to eat them. So a plate guard just attaches to the normal plates you have at home. This is a scoop dish, so it's built with one side that has a little bit of a roundness so you can scoop against it. But a lot of people, if you look at home, you might have, if you have pasta bowls, those are bowls that are designed with a flat bottom, but sides. And so that might be a better choice for you rather than a flat plate, is just always eat from a pasta bowl with that sort of flat bottom and higher side. Again, Dyson, like we mentioned earlier, is useful during eating. Travel cups are good for transporting liquids. So whether it's water, milk, apple juice, wine, coffee, having the cup with the top on it in case you're having tremors, in case while you're walking you have a little bit of balance issues, and then a sliding top so you can open and control a little bit how much is coming out at the top. And the last one on here is what's called a nosy cup. This cup is great for people who have difficulty either extending their head so they can't tip back to drink, or who, when they do tip back, they tend to aspirate, so get some of the liquid down their throat and choking. The advantage of this cup is that cutout that you see in the front, that's for your nose. So you, instead of the cup hitting your nose, you can actually tip it further and still get liquid out without having to tip your head back. I do apologize, this is going quickly, but I'm trying to get everything done before I run out of time. So in the living room, these are just sort of things to think about. How are your lights? Are they bright enough? Are they easy for you to get on and off? Would you benefit from timers for your lights or some automation? I've had a few clients who have difficulty. They're like, I don't know what happens, but I seem to always miss the coffee table when I go to put something on it. And that can be a little bit related to some perceptual issues that can happen with Parkinson's. And so sometimes just adding a highlight colored tape at the edge of the coffee table gives that concrete cue of where you're trying to get to. So that can be an option for that, avoiding throw rugs because they are a tripping hazard. When you're thinking about sitting to stand from chairs or couches, so it could be your dining room chair, it could be your living room couch, try and always have something that's at least as high as the back of your knees, if not a little bit higher when you back up to it. That way you know that your hip is going to be higher than your knee, and mechanically that's better, easier for you to stand up from. Avoid angled seats, because if you have too much dump at the back, it's hard to get those hips up. And if it's angled forward, then you're at risk of sliding forward. So be careful about those things. And whenever possible, armrests, armrests, armrests. Sorry. Power chairs, those are power lift chairs. So the lazy boy that helps you stand up is something that people often ask me about. There are definitely pros and cons. I am kind of like, as Ron was saying earlier, exercise, exercise, exercise. I would prefer you to be working hard and getting out of your chair than using the chair to do all the work, because for some people, when they're at that point, up and down out of a chair is a big part of their exercise that they get in the day. So if possible, keep using your legs and using your leg muscles so that you don't lose more of that strength. However, for some people who are unable to get out of a chair, a power lift chair can be helpful. However, as a warning, there was recently a coroner's inquest here in Ontario because there were deaths of 3 Ontarians due to injuries they sustained after falling out of power chairs. So it's something to consider that if someone is maybe too rigid or their cognition has changed so that they're not pushing the button the right way, they're getting confused about how to go up, how to go down, then that might not be the best option for them anymore. And of course, for TV or music controls, something like a Google Home or an Alexa, where you can just say, you know, Alexa, turn on CBC News, and the automated computers will take care of all of that. So those are ways to get out of having to push those small little buttons on controllers. In terms of mobility, so lasers are a big thing lately in mobility for people with Parkinson's. So there are now shoes with lasers and walkers with lasers and canes with lasers. And the idea is that the laser is projected ahead of your feet, so where you're going to give that cue to, in a freezing moment, to know, step forward, get to that mark, get to that line. And so with it on your shoe, that line is just always moving ahead of you. Same thing with if it's in a walker, here it's between the wheels, there's the laser line. It just gives you always a target that you're walking towards. Success, again, depends on the person. It's really one of those things to try out. You could always try having a laser level from Canadian Tire and seeing, is that something that really is going to help you out before you invest in one of these more expensive technologies. A walker dangle is something I've used with a few clients, where rather than a laser that's on the ground between the wheels, we've actually hung a string with a little, in this case, it was soccer balls, because that's what I happen to have, about this big. And so when the person was in the moment of freezing, they thought, okay, kick the soccer ball. And that movement of trying to kick the soccer ball was enough to help them get through that frozen moment. And so they could carry on walking. Other ways to distract from that frozen moment, for some people, it's thinking, okay, I'm going to take a march step and actually do more like a marching movement, like a military style march. Squishing a bug on the ground, trying to stomp, hand clap, just to do something completely different, or slap their thigh. So sometimes doing a distracting movement is helpful for some people to get through that frozen moment. Again, works for some people, not for everyone, but it might be worth a try. Some people respond well to metronomes. So having on their phone a little metronome app that's ticking away, either through sound or vibration, just helps them keep a nice, even, steady pace, and then they don't lose or get stuck in that frozen moment. In the same way, playing music with a strong beat, so maybe not some classical music, but a little bit of AC/DC or something. Something with a strong beat that gives you that same rhythmic movement to help the system cue into, okay, this is what I'm doing, I'm following this same beat. Using tape stripes on floors in high-risk fall areas. For example, I had a client who every other night on his way from the bedroom to the bathroom, he would stumble, and if he didn't catch himself on the wall, then he would fall. And we added some tape to his floor, and just having those little visual cues, that was enough to clear up that problem for him. Sitting to standing, make sure your hips are at the front of the seat or the front of the chair, and get your nose over your toes. So biomechanically, you have the best advantage to stand up. And Nordic poles or Nordic walking sticks are an option for some people to help, especially on distance, because it encourages you to have that rhythmic walking and your arm swing, which a lot of times in Parkinson's, we see the arm swing starts to disappear. It's a great outdoor activity. It's great for cardiovascular, as well as there are a lot of social groups that do Nordic walking together. So kind of falling back to Ron's tip number one and two, get outside and meet people and get some exercise. In the car, so a seat spinner. So some people, it's that, you know, you can sit in the car and we just can't get turned to get your legs over the edge of the car. So this is just a circular seat that when you sit on it, it slides easy to allow you to turn in that seat. I've done the same thing with some clients with just a nylon shopping bag. Just something slippery, kind of like when Ron was talking about the sheets in bed, something easier to take away that friction when you're trying to turn on that seat. Handy bar is similar to the one that Ron showed you as a handle to get in and out. Again, the leg lifter, getting in and out of bed. Sometimes for people in the car, that's where they're stuck, is getting their foot in and out of the car. So that leg lifter can help. And for those who are driving but trunk mobility or neck mobility is a little bit reduced, you can get extended mirrors, rear view mirrors, as well as smaller side mirrors to help you see and make up for what you might not be able to get in your range of motion. In terms of written communication, just really quickly, there are, go back one. Pen grips can help some people. Again, it's just that idea of making a bigger grip so everything's not working quite so hard. Weighted gloves is an option for some people, kind of like with the weighted utensils. It just gives a stabilizing element. Consider the ink of what you're using. So a pencil, which you might have to push harder, versus a gel pen, which might go too fast for you. So changing around and trying out different pens can sometimes help. In most computers' control panel, there are adjustments for typing speed and sticky keys and eliminating repetitive tapping. So those can all be options. And Ron already talked about voice to text. So that too is something that can help out. In terms of resources, so Amazon, the internet has all kinds of things. There are local vendors like an Ontario Medical Supply or Canada Care. There are specific companies like Performance Health or Parsons Medical, which all they do is ADL type assistive devices and that sort of thing. You may not be able to order from them directly, but if you go to their websites, you'll be able to see lots of different ideas, and maybe something we haven't talked about, you're going to see just in there because you're looking around, that might be the thing that helps you. And also mainstream stores like Canadian Tire, Walmart, Dollarama, use your creativity a little bit, because sometimes they have the things that you need and you don't have to go through a specialty store. As I said before, there will be a handout afterwards that's coming to you in a couple of days so that you can get some information from there. Because where someone is in Parkinson's, and I'm throwing a lot of information and ideas at you, sometimes you need a little bit of help to figure out what might be the best thing for you. So I've included some resources on how to find help. So the Canadian Association of Occupational Therapists has a tool called Find an OT. And so you can find an OT near you who may be able to help you out. Certainly provincial governments should have some services. So for example, here in the Ottawa area, we have a website called the Champlain Healthline, where you can look up and find an OT if you want to consult with someone to get, now it's probably private, but it might be publicly funded, but you never know. OT is hard to get publicly funded sometimes these days. But also check with Parkinson's Canada. They have an information and referral team, or your local support groups. Talk to your friends, other people who have Parkinson's, because maybe they've already worked with someone who's helped them out. That is all for me. So I'm going to throw it back to Donna. I'm sorry, it was really quick. I hope.
Yeah, that's great, Valerie. Thank you so much. And thank you for sending that list of all the resources and links that we will be sharing when we do send out that follow-up email to everyone. We're going to go right into some questions that have been submitted. So Valerie, someone asked, are there any other devices available to help with freezing? Someone has seen a trial for a new item like a vibrating ankle bracelet. Is there anything like that currently on the market?
Sorry, I muted myself. There we go. So I have heard about the vibrating. So there's actually vibrating ankle braces. There's socks, and someone was doing a shoe insole. So vibration seems to be the new thing. And what they're looking at is, can the vibration help send that information, clearer signals to the brain to get the movement that we're hoping to get? So it's a very interesting piece of research. What I could find so far is everything is still in the trial phase. So it's in trial research. So they're looking into it, they're exploring it. It is interesting about the idea of using proprioception to help with that freezing element. So I'll be interested in to see what comes out of it, but as of right now, I don't know of any that are on the market.
Thank you. On that same topic, actually a few people have asked if there's any gadgets or devices that can help reduce drooling or excess saliva that can cause choking and potential aspiration.
So that's a little bit beyond drooling, is a little bit beyond what I usually do. However, having worked with some speech language pathologists, there are sort of three general treatments, interventions for drooling. So either there's medication, surgical, or behavioral. So medication, surgical, you need to talk to your medical team about that. But in terms of behavioral thing, it's really about trying to engage that swallow much more consistently and much more habitually. And there is an app for that. So there's an app for, let me just look at the name of it. It's called Swallow Prompt. And it's available on Apple or Google Play Store. And what it basically is just, it's almost like a timer that'll either buzz or play a little tune, a little chime, just to remind you consciously to swallow and manage that saliva more frequently so that you're not getting the buildup that then might cause drooling or potentially aspiration.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for that information. The next question is for Ron. Ron, do you want to turn your camera on? There we go. So someone has asked, as an inventor, have you thought about inventing something for people with Parkinson's? And if so, what would it be?
I assume you mean other than a cure for Parkinson's. Yes, one thing I'm experimenting with is an aid to help with swimming. Because of the coordination, I find it difficult to coordinate. I really don't trust myself in the pool. I've tried different floats and belts and so on. Nothing quite is satisfactory. So I'm still working on it.
Awesome. Great. This one's for Valerie. And you can both just leave your cameras on and your microphones on. Great. Okay. So someone has asked, what tools can you suggest to aid in opening cans with ring pulls like cat food tins? And do you know where they could be purchased?
Yes. So a few ideas for that. So I am going to share my screen again. So if you look at this beautiful little thing, you remember these for opening like orange, tomato juice cans and apple juice cans. You can actually use this to hook that under the little edge and then pry it open. So if it's just a matter of getting it started, so that'll, if you kind of jam it under there, it'll fit, and then you can pry that open and then you can pull it off. If, however, your problem is actually even getting it open, you can't get it off, then there is this other little gadget. Look at that, which does the same thing. So it's got a little hook on the end that you hook under the tab, and then you rotate the whole thing and it'll peel that whole top back for you right off. I will put the information in that handout. I don't have the name of where to get it on me right now, but I will include that information in the handout that Parkinson Canada sends out later.
That looks really great. I can see how people with really long nails would find that useful as well.
Exactly.
Right. Someone has asked Valerie, they're saying that they're having difficulties with gardening. Do you have any tips or handy tricks or tools to be able to still enjoy gardening?
Gardening is such a great activity, especially in the summertime. You just get out, get your hands dirty, be with nature, because nature is its own vitamin. So I encourage everyone to get out as much as they can. A lot of people, so there are different options depending again on what's your issue. So for someone who maybe is having balance issues or stiffness or having difficulty getting down, getting up, reaching forward, that kind of thing, places like Home Depot and I believe Lee Valley have little trolleys. So the wheels are like about this big, but it has like tractor seat on it. So you can actually sit, you're close to the ground, the tractor seat rotates, so you can be reaching one part of the garden, reach over to the other part of the garden, so you're stable, you're low, and then it has like a little box beside it so you can have all your tools with you. So that's something for someone who, you know, maybe it's just a little bit of mobility and balance issues, because then you can, because it has wheels, you can like go up and down sideways in your garden. It doesn't turn very well, but at least you can get some sideways mobility going. So that's an option. Raising your flower beds or raising your gardens, or using planters or rail hanging little gardens are some other options. And there's also, with one client I did, we used, there's a gardening tool extension. So it actually supports up your arm. So you don't have to, you do still hold it. So you can put a trowel on the end or a little brake thing or a little diggy thing. But it supports up your arm. So you have a little bit more support to be digging or doing things in the garden. So hopefully that helps. I'm not sure what exactly the gardening issues were, but those are some ideas for that.
Don, I have a solution for gardening as well.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Works very well for me. I married a gardener. Judy loves gardening.
There you go. You just need to find a new friend who loves
There
gardening.
you go.
Yeah. Actually, there's another question for you, Ron. What is the best tip that someone has shared with you that you didn't already know or hear about?
Oh, one of my buddies bicycling has taught me how to fall off a bicycle. That's been very helpful. It's like kind of like a Navy SEAL role.
Great. And is that in your perky tips?
No, maybe I should put that one in.
That might be a good idea.
He has a little video even to do that. He also shared with me the tips about getting in out of bed. That's very helpful.
Wonderful. Okay, question for Valerie. Someone says they get stiff laying in bed, and how can they get themselves out of bed in the morning when they're incredibly stiff? And they say sometimes it takes them about an hour just to be able to get out of bed, even with doing stretches. Do you have any tips for that?
So the stretches are an excellent idea. It's one of the best things you can do. Having something like a bed rail. I don't know if you already have something that you can pull against or push against to give you a little bit more mechanical advantage when you're trying to get out of bed. So that's another idea. I talked earlier about that idea of, so I don't know where in the getting out of bed your difficulty is, if it's in the sort of lying to sitting. So how are you, what's your technique? Is there a way to use gravity or momentum to help you out? And then the other one I mentioned earlier about the covers, but it works just as well for in bed, is that idea of using a really big movement. So I've done training with some of my clients before, where if you can imagine, I'm sleeping, I'm lying on my back, my bed is behind me. I want to get out of bed this way. I need to get onto this shoulder, and I can't get myself over. But by opening my arm and my leg, which I know you can't see, and then almost throwing the two of them and using them as a bit of momentum to get me over, using a really big movement, sometimes that's enough. I know those are really quick answers, but it's hard without getting to meet you and seeing how you work to find a clear answer.
Right, thank you. And now I know that someone else has asked specifically about shower chairs that are more narrow. In the resource that you're sharing, do you have a link on where people can look for specific shower chairs?
So the thing about shower chairs is every company has their own variety. There's probably 60 or 70 out there. So that would be hard to narrow down. I know that sometimes tubs are very narrow footed, and so that people have difficulty with the typical shower chairs because the legs just splay too wide. I have had clients use actually lawn chairs. So like a white, the white plastic lawn chairs with rubber boots on the bottom. So to make sure it's not going to slip in there, but it just has a bit of a narrower profile that they were able to securely put it in there. And it's not like, check it, make sure it's not going to move in your tub, and use that. And then they have armrests as well. So I do know of some people who've done that, but again, you have to make sure you have the right thing and it's solid and on the floor. Otherwise, just really, unfortunately, it's a lot of searching the different companies and going through to see what are the dimensions you have and what can make fit.
Okay, and we've just got one last question. Someone is asking you to expand a little bit more about the enhanced night lights that you were talking about.
Right, so it's not, so it can be a motion detector light. So not like the little night light that you'd plug into your bathroom that stays on all night and it's really soft. This would be an actual light that's bright enough that you can see, but you're plugging it into a wall plug, so it's low. The idea being that when you get up, it's only when your legs swing over the side that the light comes on. So it's not coming on if you're changing positions in bed, which some motion detector lights will do. And then it's coming on when you don't need it on. So it's low enough that it only gets triggered when you swing your legs over the bed. And it's also, because it's low, the light is shining low and it's not shining up in your eyes, which is what can cause night blindness for some people. And then all they see is spots, and that's not helping. So it's shining. So it's really, it's a night light that you can get to install in your house in case there are burglars coming and you want the light to turn on when there's motion, but you're just installing it really low so that it's shining at sort of knee level.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. That's wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone who submitted questions for our speakers, and a very special thank you to Valerie Metcalf and Ron Begg for sharing some really great ideas and letting us know about some special products that can help people with Parkinson's more easily manage some of the activities of daily living. Today's attendees will receive a follow-up email with a link to a recording of this webinar and a link to the resources that were mentioned today. I invite you to join us for our next webinar, The Ups and Downs of Dopamine, Managing Off Periods and Dyskinesia, taking place on Wednesday, July 19th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Watch your email inboxes for more details and a registration link. On behalf of all of us at Parkinson Canada, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. See you next month.